Good. Okay, so the recording is started, just so I don't forget that. And then I am going to share it into the Facebook live stream. So what I do is I put it on my Jessica Erlinson page, and then from there I can share it into the group as well. So it's kind of like you get my 3,000 people that are following me personally, and also the people in the group. Okay, share on my own timeline, make it public, go live. It says it's preparing, which is good. Sometimes it just says you don't have permission to do that. I'm like, yeah, I did it last week. Oh, there we go. Okay. It is live. So I'm going to just see if I can share this into the group as well. And then we'll be live on both platforms. Nice. Okay. It all worked.
Great.
Hooray, it's a miracle. Okay, so I met Amanda through the sisterhood circle group that I joined a while back. Not even sure how I ended up getting invited into that, but I do talk on a lot of podcasts and I try and make connections with other women that are in business and particularly in the wellness side of things. And I just put out a general, hey, does anybody know anything about perimenopause that they might want to come and share? And you were recommended to contact you directly and see. And then we had a meeting and just got along really well and have a lot of similar kind of values and views about holistic health. And I've got a few questions that I managed to send you in advance. I had someone else ask if you would answer questions that are not mood related. It was a specific question about using vaginal estrogen cream. So if we can approach, and mostly I think people just want to make sure that it's safe and that it stays local, and they want to hear that again and again from different people. She didn't tell me what the exact question she had about it, so maybe just we can make sure to address that a little bit.
Okay.
And then perimenopause in general, because of the one lady that contacted me this last week that can't get anyone to believe that she's in perimenopause. So we definitely want to talk about that. And overall, we're talking about moods and how badly they can be affected by perimenopause. So you're not going crazy. It probably is your hormones, and things fluctuate pretty, sometimes extremely. I can have some pretty big mood swings in one day. But then as time has progressed and I've learned more about perimenopause, and I've been coaching other women and running this group for 4 years. I just kind of flow with it more now. I was like, yeah, this is another part of it. It's a mood swing. And then when I don't take it so, like, oh my God, I lost my temper, or I started crying. If it's okay, right? It's just part of the whole process. And then I get back to a baseline much easier. So I really like to start talking about naturopathic, because if you went into naturopathic medicine, at some point you might have considered becoming a medical doctor and going, because you do the same base courses, right? You have to take all the same
Yes.
base courses. And then,
Yeah.
so what was it about going to the naturopathic side that really appealed to you?
Uh, Really, it was an adverse reaction to the medical side initially. So I was a biochemistry major in undergrad and wasn't sure if I was going into medicine or research. I really was interested in science. And I learned that I was really interested in finding the causes and understanding how the body works, which is why I chose biochemistry over some of the other sciences. And when it came time to apply to medical schools, I really was just at this point of I didn't like my classmates. I couldn't stand their attitudes. I was like, I don't know if I want to be around these type of people for another, 6 years. I just was not feeling it. And this was I'm going to age myself, but it was the late 90s. And it was when the statins just came out. It was like kind of a turn in medicine towards pharmaceuticals in a different way than it had been. And I also didn't have much exposure to the medical community. Thankfully, I was very healthy. I had a healthy family. I didn't really know too much about medical specialties, just from my own experience. And I just was disillusioned by the drug culture. So I
Mm.
decided to go into research for a few years. And my mother actually saw a naturopathic doctor on a morning show, like the Today Show or something like that. And she said, you should look into naturopathic medicine. It sounds like what you've been describing that you wanted to do, but I didn't know it existed. I wanted to focus on nutrition. I wanted to focus on treating the whole person and holistic medicine. And I had not had experience with really nutritional supplements or herbs at that time. It was really more about the tenets of treating the cause, treating the whole person, bringing the body in balance. And then I started looking at naturopathic medical schools and decided to go to Bastyr in Seattle. And then found a love of herbs and plant-based nutrition and hormone balancing, which really grew out of my own hormone journey, which was interesting up until that point. And so as I grew my practice, I focused on women's health and hormones, particularly because I felt women's health was ignored. Anything, when I said women's health to people, they thought, oh, fertility. Like, well, I want to do
Yeah.
everything else outside of fertility to help women. So I really just grew my practice helping women in those other phases of life feel their best as they're going through hormone changes. And now I specialize in perimenopause and menopause solely. I've niched it even down to that, and really still, unfortunately, see that that's the need in women's health, that it's an ignored space, which leads us to these discussions today of answering these questions that women unfortunately aren't getting answered with their primary care or gynecologist yet.
Yeah, I was just thinking as I was getting ready to go come and do this talk with you. I do my makeup in 5 minutes, like just that's my one brag that I can do makeup in 5 minutes. But then I don't use foundation and all the other stuff. But so I'm doing my makeup and I was like, what is interesting to me is that I might have more training in hormones and menopause and perimenopause than a lot of doctors because I took Dr. Sarah Gottfried's Beautiful Hormones class on the Commune website on their university. And we had 5 weeks with lectures for every week on a series of different topics where we went pretty deep, even into like medical treatments that could potentially be used and the difference between perimenopause and what happens in menopause and how she approaches things. She's a medical doctor, but she approaches things in a really holistic way. And she said to me about, what I'm doing, she was like, you can think of it like the system itself is broken. Probably is for women's health, right? We do get kind of the shaft, the short end of the stick, unless we're trying to get pregnant. They're pretty good about that stuff. But you're working kind of on the inside when you're working with women who are going through perimenopause and menopause. You're kind of like in the trenches with them. And, my training, if you added up all of the whole hours, it was like 5 weeks and we had hour-long lectures every week. And she gave us an extra bonus lecture. So that's 6 hours, not including the viewing of all of the video materials and the references that she sent for medical studies. And so, if you added it all up, it's probably more like 8 to 12 hours, which is more than average doctor that gets 1 hour about menopause, which
Right. And then usually less than 3 hours about nutrition. And think about how much nutrition and food as medicine was probably incorporated into that course as well.
oh yeah, like she was really she's an Alaska girl, so she was talking about like wild salmon and venison and sourcing your food from like local produce and the benefits of that, and you know getting your food in more a community way, right? So not just what you eat, but how you eat is going to impact how. Just so very knowledgeable in a way that like average doctor probably didn't have to stretch that much. But you mentioned your hormone journey a little bit, and she had a similar thing where she was fine and right as rain and just working like crazy and had kids and all the whole thing, and then eventually got to the point in the 40s where it was like, well, I just can't do this anymore, and figured out herself because she was a doctor that it was perimenopause, and then started helping other women. So is that kind of what happened for you? Things ramped up somewhere in your 30s and
Actually, my hormone journey started a little earlier when I first started getting periods in my teens. They were not regular at all, meaning I'd have them every month for 6 months, then they would disappear for a year, and then they'd come back for a few months and then disappear. So there was definitely things going on then, but conventional medicine couldn't find anything wrong. It's,
Mhm.
no, didn't necessarily look too much into things, but made sure my ovaries were healthy and didn't have any blockages, and the fallopian tubes are, anatomically things were great. And the other piece was too, whether I had my regular periods or not, I felt the same. I didn't have any major symptoms or any issues when I didn't have periods. So it wasn't higher on their radar. But when I started looking at, oh, I should also say I was vegetarian, and that's what they always pointed to. Like, oh, well, if you just ate meat, you'd get your periods. I mean, I didn't eat meat those 6 months that I was having my periods randomly, so it wasn't that.
Yeah.
But when I went to naturopathic school, that's what I really was. I mean, you learn so many different things, and of course, you want to maybe experiment on yourself because you aren't seeing patients yet. So that's kind of where I started with herbal medicine and acupuncture and really nutrition and finding ways to get more protein. And I really needed to have a lot more fat in my diet. And I went through times, obviously, medical school is very stressful. So stress was a big piece of my treatment plan, and things got better and worse throughout school. But as I was beginning my practice, was really focused on it. And in my early 30s, had regular periods. For me, the key is really stress management and a higher fat diet, and actually transitioning to vegan instead of vegetarian because dairy was messing things up for me. So it was actually the opposite advice that I was given by conventional medicine is to go fully plant-based, really. And I really, in my 30s, had regular periods and, PMS, and things were great. And when I entered my 40s, things did change. And again, it was related to stress and burnout more than anything else. So I know that that's sort of like what throws me off easily. And now that I'm in my late 40s, it's a different landscape, and I'm, doing my own testing and tracking things and, fine tuning and tweaking things along the way.
Yeah, it's a similar story for me. I mean, I was one of those blessed people that really didn't have any period issues. It just kind of came one day and then it came every month, and that was about it. And then all of the sudden in my 40s, I started having issues. And when I did my yoga teacher training, right away, I kind of knew I didn't want to like run an exercise class. Um, well, what I didn't like about it is there's always someone kind of getting left behind where they can't quite do that posture, and I would be leading the class and watching and being like, oh, she just needs a pillow under her left hip and then she'd be fine. I can see she's uncomfortable, but you can't like stop everything and go and help that person. Instead, they just kind of get lost in the fray, and maybe you catch them at the end of the class and say, try a pillow next time, like make sure to have some props close by. Whereas with the yoga therapy program at Mount Royal University, it was really like, how can you treat specific issues? So we did all kinds of different situations as like mock-ups and trials. We did a lot of treatment on each other as yoga therapists while we were doing their student training. And I wasn't planning on focusing on perimenopause or menopause. But then when I did my pathologies class and I got the manual and I was like, okay, menopause, here we go. And there was like one paragraph in the whole book of all of these different things that we had to know and learn. And it was summarized like you may have troubling symptoms like hot flashes.
Mhm.
That's all it said. I was like, oh my goodness, this is a huge disservice. So I had to do things like taking Dr. Sarah's course and reading a lot of books and talking to a lot of people. And, then once I graduated that program, we had 2020 hit and my symptoms just went crazy. I really do think a lot of the baseline of your how stressed out you are on a day-to-day basis, like I describe it, if your cup is already half full and then you add the stress of family and work and perimenopause changes all on top of that, now you're overflowing and you are having a temper tantrum or you know hiding in your bed because you really can't cope anymore. And so it just became a bit of a no-brainer. And then right around that time, I realized that my friends didn't want to talk about perimenopause. I'm a little bit older than a lot of my friends. And so I started the CPMS group kind of like on a whim. Like there's got to be other ladies out there that want to talk about what's happening and just be honest and have a frank conversation about what's going on. And they need the support of hearing that they're not alone from other people. And then within a few weeks, it was at 100 people, and all from friends inviting friends. people that wanted to talk about it. And so it was a loving and kind and naturally very functional little bubble where we could talk about things and no one was mean because everybody had a friend watching, right? So everyone was
Mhm.
kind. And then I kept having people that nobody knew. We didn't have any mutual contacts. And so we had a bit of a debate, like, should we open it up or should we keep it really small and safe? And the consensus was, man, everybody needs a lot of help and they're just not finding it anywhere else. Like, if you can handle the people being mean to you, we think you should open it up. So I did a little deep dive, can I handle the occasional person being a total jerk just because they're online and they feel like they are entitled to do that? And the answer was, yeah, you know what? Like, I just kind of hold the mirror up for them. Here's what you said to me. That's not appropriate. I'm trying to help you. Goodbye. You can
Yeah.
find help somewhere else, is what I came to in the grand scheme of things. So now I think as of today, we're like 12,600 and something. And it's all grown really organically because it's still people inviting people. And then I started getting volunteers involved, and they call out the people that aren't actually people. We have
Oh, yes,
12,600
I know that
actual
whole
people.
motivation. Yeah.
And they all want to get help with their perimenopause. So perimenopause, I think I focus on that a lot because that's kind of like the confusing nowhere land. Like,
Yes. And clinically, I find it so much more interesting too. I know it's a more troubling time for women, and like psychological studies have shown that women's life satisfaction dips at that time and then gets better after menopause, which I think is a great sign. And, but clinically, it is more interesting to me because, as you mentioned, the hormones are changing more and the balances between them are changing more. We have these life situations of women being really busy in their careers and very active and possibly have younger children than previous generations of women in perimenopause and still aging parents that other generations had. And we have a modern life and there's more stress. And I just find it more interesting and a really good application for naturopathic medicine. I do still see women that are postmenopause, but at that point, things aren't changing as we're hormone wise and we're looking at stabilization and symptom management and health prevention for the future, preventing bone density issues and heart issues and brain issues, which is great. But I think in perimenopause, when you're working really close with women, as you know, week to week and month to month, and seeing things evolve and change in positive ways, and then seeing a different approach to it, knowing that some women may be in this phase for 10 years and 5 years, um, that you can really help them improve their quality of life and how they're feeling going through the change, and even prevent a lot of the menopause symptoms that we think of, like hot flashes and sleepless nights. So I
mhm,
find perimenopause much more of a rich space to play, but it is a gray area as
mhm.
far as conventional medicine is concerned because it's not the same thing happening to every woman. So
Yeah,
they don't
yeah.
have a one or two size fits all approach. So the system is not really equipped to manage or help well.
Yeah. And did you have any thoughts about that one lady who was asking about, no one will believe her. She said, I've had fertility treatments and they failed. And I think I'm in perimenopause. And she was telling me some of the things. And I was like, sounds like perimenopause to me. And I've seen that before with the client who came in who had failed fertility treatments where no actual, and they did everything, spared no expense kind of thing. Eventually the doctors were like, it's not going to happen. I think you should move towards possibly adopting, which she did. But then, when she met me, she was like, I think it's perimenopause, but no one will believe me. And so we worked together, and I helped her get sorted. And she went from like being worried she was going to get fired to having a promotion at work after doing the coaching. And largely it was just because I believed her. I believed that it possibly
Mhm.
could be perimenopause. And then we started working with the symptoms, and I helped her to find a prescribing pharmacist who could help her get her, treatment plan together.
Yes,
And
and part of it is that awareness and acceptance that's really empowering. And then, as you mentioned, with your own mood and how it can change, like just knowing that there's underlying causes between, like that could be triggering that, and understanding that. And sometimes working with women and cycle tracking and symptom tracking, we can help to like start to anticipate some of those things and get ahead of them. Uh, that's helpful too, because it takes away that I'm feeling like I'm the only one that's going through this. No one believes me, or it's all in my head. Am I really just, irritated? And that's just how life's going to be. And so it takes away like that layer of stress when you have the understanding. I don't have a simple answer, unfortunately, of how to convince your doctor that you're in perimenopause, because there isn't just one test that they could do to just diagnose it as we do with menopause. So it is a collection of symptoms. If you're cycling, noticing if your periods are getting longer or the cycle's closer together. You can look at progesterone levels, and because progesterone levels are slowly declining in our 40s with each cycle. And so if you're wondering yourself or trying to convince your doctor, that could be something you could ask for, asking for total estrogens or estradiol and progesterone to be done at day 20 of your cycle if you're still cycling. Often when doctors are talking to women that are still having cycles, they think, oh, well, there's no problem, you're still having cycles. So that's one way to approach it, is that if you do some test around that luteal phase at day 20, maybe they'll see that there are those imbalances and collect that with their collection of symptoms and see that it's perimenopause. Also, you can do testing at home too and track your hormones and tracking your symptoms, and then seeing your pattern and having some agency over it, and then showing that it is a perimenopausal pattern to your doctor. But there's no sort of like magic words that you're going to say to the doctor to make them think, oh, it's perimenopause. I've also seen a
Yeah.
lot of patients that have talked to their primary care gynecologist already, and their doctor has said, oh, well, it's just perimenopause. You're just going to have to get through it. So, I mean, one part is we want the physicians to believe it and address and see that it's perimenopause, but then some women get to that stage and they're not getting help either because they don't have a solution for it.
Yeah. And I like what you said about advocacy, because when I was chatting back and forth with that lady, I thought, it's really frustrating in that she just feels like she's not being believed, and even not, and maybe they're trying to be hopeful because the advice from the doctor was like, we should still be focused on fertility and try and get you pregnant.
Mm.
She, as the patient, is at that point where she doesn't want to keep trying, right? And I think there should be an honoring of that, that you can only try for so long, and then you're done, with the, because it is exhausting
Mm-hmm.
trying and trying to get pregnant, and the hormones they give you for fertility, to do the farming of the eggs, right, where they give you the hormone to create so many eggs. And I think that's just really hard on the body in general. So less less listening. Here's one thing that I'll give to the people watching it. I've found sometimes when I'm talking to a doctor, if things are kind of going a little bit sideways, I will ask them why they became a doctor, just like I did with you. Why did you go into naturopathic? Because they have a story. And when they tell me their story, oh, you know what? My grandma really loved science, and we talked about science all the time. And then she got dementia. I got really curious about that. And that's why I ended up becoming a doctor, because I wanted to understand how the human brain works. Now I've reminded them of why they became a doctor. They remember they became a doctor because they want to help people. And then I ask them the question again, what I want help with. And almost always it snaps them out of it. And they're like, okay, right. I'm here to help you. And, we're going to keep looking for different solutions until we find something that works for you. So,
Yes, and I do think also asking the doctor for something specific versus, do you think I'm in perimenopause, or can you test my hormones, or what hormone test can we do? They're more apt to follow through with, can you test my progesterone, estradiol, and TSH on day 20 of my cycle?
yeah.
Because there's really not a reason not to do it. So, but if you say, can we test my hormones? But if you're looking to see if you're in perimenopause and don't have specific symptoms that you're addressing, it's harder for them to see the rationale based on the insurance and payment systems and things like that. Because
Yeah.
also blood tests for hormones are have their obstacles and what they can tell you. So it also depends on what you're looking for when you're doing those hormone tests.
Yeah, and it's not perfect either, right? Like I've heard
Right.
that from people, and like the general philosophy is we don't test for hormones in Canada because they're fluctuating so much, which is okay in the general idea. But for someone like me, if we hadn't been testing, I have a functional medicine doctor, so she tests every 3 months if I'm not stable, every 6 months if I am stable, and I've been very stable for the last few years. But because we were doing that, she caught that I had really, really way out to lunch high estrogen, and then recommended a supplement because she's functional medicine, so she's an alternative doctor, and the supplement did nothing in the 3 months. I was even higher at the end of those 3 months. So then we added in progesterone and things started to come down. Now, if she hadn't been testing me and she'd just been going based on my symptoms, she might have even been thinking, let's start hormone therapy and add in estrogen and progesterone, when I really didn't need the estrogen. But it was the test results and like kind of like the baseline, and how the pattern shows over time. So it isn't
Yes.
really like, you do the test and then you know exactly what's going on. We had to retest in 3 months to know for sure. And all that was covered through Alberta Healthcare. But there is home testing, like you mentioned. So would you suggest that to someone who's like, well, that was one of the questions we had, was how often should we be doing testing or asking for our hormones to be looked at and that kind of thing?
I mean, that definitely varies on your symptoms. And like you said, like you had said from your experience, where things were stable or whether they were changing symptom wise. So that really depends on your situation and sort of where you are on the menopause, perimenopause spectrum, at the beginning and towards the end. So
Yeah.
it really depends on what you're looking at and what you're looking for. So if you're looking to see if you think you may be in perimenopause because of symptoms, like those initial tests that I mentioned are a good check-in. And if you see if the progesterone's on the lower side, you might want to check in another 3 months and see the trend, like you said. If you're testing at home, because home testing is a little bit easier, you can do urine tests where you're tracking throughout your cycle. Little bit before ovulation, more or mid-cycle, to see if you're ovulating, looking at the progesterone response after that. If you start on that path, it is recommended, especially if you're in your 40s and potentially in perimenopause, to do 3 cycles and see your pattern, because it may be alternating ovulating every other month. So don't just do 1 month and good, but doing 3 cycles and seeing really where your progesterone is at, and then starting to determine if you're in perimenopause or not, or what side needs to be tweaked. Because it is tricky, because we have potentially lower progesterone levels, which cause a certain set of symptoms, potentially estrogen dominance, or which causes a certain set of symptoms, or it could be both. And then you have all of the symptoms and not sure which way's more of the culprit. So I find that cycle tracking symptoms and hormones can be helpful for women, especially if they can't get access to testing with their doctor, or if it's too difficult um, to follow up and see their trends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting because people will say to me, well, how does it start? Like they really want me to say, like, if you have glaucoma, it's going to start in a particular way. And then you can say, well, when you start to have this issue, or, when you go to your checkup, make sure you do every
Mhm.
year. And then they're going to be looking for glaucoma because it's in your family history, those kind of things. But perimenopause doesn't really look like that at all. Whereas I had some symptoms, mostly stress result, like, overblown stress and like trouble sleeping. And then I started getting chronic UTIs, but I wasn't having vaginal dryness that I was aware of. I wasn't having painful intercourse. I wasn't having any kind of down there issues whatsoever that I knew of. I
Mhm.
wasn't noticing anything. But all of a sudden, I had like bang, bang, bang UTIs. And thank goodness I had this functional medicine doctor, because I went back to her and said, I don't know what's going on. I haven't had any in 20 years. And now I've had all these in a row. And she said, oh, let's get the vaginal estrogen and a couple of supplements that I tried that really help with basically the environment of the bladder, that make it a little harder for the
Yep.
bacteria to set up shop.
Yes.
And then I couldn't believe what a huge difference it made. Just a little bit would make such a big difference for me. And then I've had to adjust as time went by, but I really feel like having that in my regime early, before I really needed it, like, prevented a lot of issues. And then when I finally did
Mhm.
end up having some painful intercourse, instead of, sitting with it and dwelling on it or letting it get me down, I immediately went to a pelvic floor physiotherapist, because I knew that was the thing to do. That's like, if you have eye pain, don't go see your bum doctor. Right?
Right.
Don't go to the regular doctor if you have something that's specific like that. You need someone who's going to deal with the pelvic floor, and got that dealt with right away. So a lot of it, I think, really is getting in ahead of it. And you mentioned that a little bit, right? Like, I really believe like the sooner you start, the better off your progression is going to be, because you'll be looking for things and you'll be aware of what could potentially happen, and you'll be a little bit more cautious or communicative with your doctor if you start
Yes,
developing migraines or
like
something.
noticing changes and noticing when they're coming up. If they're having migraines mid-cycle, possibly some estrogen dominance going on there. Or if which I am encouraged by, more women are contacting me now to look at perimenopause because they've noticed their periods are 26 or 27 days apart instead of 30. And I'm like, great, I've been talking about that for years. Like it's getting out there, it's starting to happen. And the importance of tracking, and even if you're not trying to get pregnant, or to track your cycle, to notice when that subtle change happens, because you may not notice because it's happening every month and you're not missing periods, but it's a subtle change. And that's sort of like when things are starting to tip, but it's not the same for everyone, so it is a little tricky.
Yeah, it's not the same. I have a comprehensive symptoms list that I'll send out to, the client base of people that contact me. And sometimes they'll be like, this is a wacky list, right? It's got so many different things on it. It's like, well, because you're not going to necessarily have all of them be a problem, but let's just say headaches, right? So you've maybe mentioned it to your doctor that you're having headaches. But then when you fill out the list and you bring it in and it says, like it's a scale, right? From never to always. So if you now say you always have a headache, and you in the note section it says I wake up with a headache every day, maybe the doctor looks at that and goes, wait a second, this is really serious. And she's
Mhm.
frustrated because she did say that before, but now he's like, okay, I want you to go to the dentist. I'm going to send you to the TMJ expert because you could have something going on with your jaw. And now I want to actually make sure that you don't have a brain tumor. Whereas before I was
Yes.
kind of minimizing you waking up with a headache. Now it jumps up as a much more important, symptom that
Yes, that
we need to
specificity
rule
really
out.
helps.
Yeah,
Like,
rule out
right,
the
we
other
say
things.
fatigue, it doesn't really set off the alarm bells, but if we can describe it more of like if it's hitting a wall of fatigue at 3 p.m. every day, or having to go back to bed at 11 a.m. after getting the kids off to school because you just can't go through. That speaks a lot more to the doctor than I'm tired all the time. Um, so the more that women can be specific will help.
Yeah.
Get
And
a
right,
response.
I think writing it down is really,
Mhm.
I swear that's partially why the list will get more attention, is because it's written out and it looks official, right? Because it's been prepared. I prepared that list from 3 different sources that I really liked and combined the ones that I thought were probably most often. I did forget breast tenderness and weight gain. So did you have anything about, I had one of the ladies contact me, and that was her first symptom, was that the weight gain suddenly happened. And all of the things that she did along with her friends who were also in their 30s, those things were working for them, probably because their hormones weren't in the same state of fluctuation.
Mhm.
But she said that she ended up feeling really, really sick in a very short period of time because, cutting out the fats, right? Because you're going a low fat diet, and, restricting the calories significantly. And then I think also workout fatigue, right? Trying to go to the gym 5 days a week, and your body's just not designed to do that.
And I do see a lot of women in that come to me after they've tried some of those things, intermittent fasting or restrictive calories, working out more, the things that worked in your 20s when the machine was finely tuned. But when you're having lower progesterone potentially in your 40s, and it isn't exactly puberty in reverse, but in some cases it is like puberty. Your body is doing more work. It has to do a lot more work to make these hormones. It's not like the finely tuned machine as it was when you were 20 for the hormone production. And that is draining on our energy. So if you're exercising more and stressing that system, it further depletes you. If you're not feeding the system with quality nutrition and enough nutrition, it's more depleting. Like think back to your teens. I mean, women don't tend to get as ravenously hungry in their teens as men did and boys did, but we did have hunger swings, growth spurts. Think of how much you needed to sleep. Women in perimenopause technically do need an hour and a half more sleep per night than we did in our 30s and then we will in our 50s. So your body's doing so much work, and then these other things are depleting it, never mind the stress that we have, like draining the system too and lowering progesterone that could be coming from other sources. So a lot of the tools that I help my patients with are, like figuring out ways to get more of that sleep if we're working on sleep hygiene or sleep quality, but then also looking at nutrition and actually feeding our hormones versus starving them. And and looking at exercise routine and more restorative exercises. It may not be the phase of your life where you want to be doing as much intense cardio, that maybe post-menopause and when things are a little more balanced than doing that, but maybe more yoga and Pilates and walking and time in nature and hiking and swimming in your 40s.
Yeah, I
But
was wondering,
that
I know
definitely goes against the American way of thinking of it. So
absolutely.
it's not easy to do that.
Absolutely. I was wondering, I had a question specifically about the weighted vest, and I've been on the fence about investing in, why can't I just wear my backpack and fill it with too much junk? But the weighted vest is
Mhm.
like this, the chiropractor, we were talking about it, and, for osteoporosis and prevention and having a little bit of a challenge on the body. How do you feel about that particular tool?
Well, it's definitely become popular. Uh, Studies have not shown really convincingly that it's going to have those benefits for bone density. It does have benefits to add 5 to 10% of an extra workload on your body when you're doing exercise. So that does increase the work that your heart and muscles need to do. So it is better for muscle building and cardiovascular fitness, like taking a walk with that weighted vest. Um, but walking with the weighted vest is not enough strenuous activity on the bones to trigger bone rebuilding.
Right.
So it doesn't necessarily have those benefits. And there's limited studies of using a weighted vest to improve bone density. There's one study that's always pointed to that only had 18 postmenopausal women in it, where 9 of them wore a weighted vest while doing sort of like heavy calisthenics, like jumping jacks and push-ups and things like that. And it did increase their bone density compared to the other group, but the other group didn't do the calisthenics either. So they over 5 years of non-exercising versus exercising potentially helped the bone
Hmm.
density versus the weighted vest.
Yeah.
I do tell women if they are under 127 pounds that they may want to consider the weighted vest for walking and other normal activities, and it may potentially help because that's sort of the dividing line where if your natural body weight is under 127, you're more at risk for having lower bone density just because of you're not actually like putting that much strength on your bone when you're moving because of your lower weight. So adding
Hmm.
the actual weight helps in that case potentially, but we don't have the studies to show it yet.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things I was thinking about it, I was like, I wonder why this might be sort of helpful, like women are finding it helpful, and then they're talking about how helpful it is. And the thought that I had was, I was just watching. I'm just curious, and I start learning about stuff all the time. So I'm really interested in managing stress. And the
Mm.
theory is, a lot of our social media is up and down, up and down. So the eyes are looking up and down and up and down, which is a stress response, right? We're at the bottom of the well and we're trying to get out. That's what the brain thinks. Whereas if I'm scanning the environment, I'm going left to right, left to right, left to right. And this is calming because it looks like I'm actually doing something. I'm
Mhm.
actually an advocate of my own life and preventing issues because I'm aware of my surroundings. So perhaps the benefit of having a little bit of the weight and going for a walk, because that's what you're recommended to do when you're wearing the weighted vest, is to go for a walk, that you're out in a natural environment. So you get, bird song and the wind and the
Yeah,
trees and
exactly.
all of that's working together. So my thing on it
Seeing
was
far off
like,
into the distance,
yeah.
reducing cortisol. And I mean, as a physician, when we were saying, oh, should you do the weighted vest or not? It really depends on, well, what are the goals? Like, is it to increase cardiovascular fitness or build more muscle, or is it specifically for bone density? And I wouldn't necessarily lean towards it as for bone density yet. But then also looking at like what would proof do we have that it would actually work? And if people are saying, women are saying that they find it helpful, and someone's asking me about the weighted vest and bone density, I would helpful to me would be wearing it for 3 years and showing that you slowed down bone density versus the past 3 years looking at your DEXA scans. But I don't think that's happening yet because it's not been popular that long yet. But if they find it helpful, getting a better workout and for all those factors that you mentioned, that's great. But medically to recommend it for someone, we're not at that point yet.
Yeah. And well, my take on it was like, look, if you feel like it might help you get out there and go for the walk, then yeah, get the weighted
Right. You're
vest.
like, oh, I'm doubling down on this walk because I have the weighted vest on and I'm going for the walk.
Well, yeah, I spent the money for the weighted vest, so I better go for a walk. If it gets
Hmm.
you moving, and the
Yes.
forward motion is supposed to be
Right.
really
And
good
that's
for
all
stress
right.
too.
That's like taking the naturopathic view of like, let's look at the whole picture, the end result, the goals, and then look at it that way. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. So I kind of, it's one of those things where it's like, does it really matter? It got you outside walking in nature, and maybe if you really wanted to know, you could try and chart it in some way. Like I have to go and do another bone scan because I got diagnosed with early osteoporosis. Lucky me. I was really shocked because I've been working out. It'll be 10 years with a personal trainer doing weight training twice a week, most weeks. And I'm a yoga therapist, so I do yoga, which is really
mhm.
you're using your own body as weight resistance. That's what we're doing with yoga mostly, physically anyway. But it's really been it's been interesting to watch my mind on it and be like, okay, well, I don't really have to change what I'm doing so much as I just have to keep doing what I can and keep doing yoga, because the thing about being a klutz, I'm a natural born klutz. I fall down, I hurt myself, and I bruise easily. But since I did the yoga teacher training, now when I go to fall, my body catches me. Like I'll end up catching myself in some way, or if I do fall, I don't hurt myself very much. It's really been quite interesting. My balance is much,
Yes,
much better. And
that's what I tell my patients too. When you're looking at bone density, it's really you want to make sure that you're enhancing your balance and your muscle strength and doing things like Pilates and yoga to help with that, to prevent falls in the first place.
right. So we
Yeah.
haven't really talked about moods, but we've talked about everything that could contribute to your mood,
Oh,
right?
I know. There's so many things in perimenopause.
And I wasn't expecting to get so many like questions, but people were really excited to have the chance to talk about this, just the subject, and have a naturopath to talk about those issues. So what kind of help can you give us around moods? Do you have any ideas, like tips, like tricks about things you can just try, simple ways to help yourself with moods? And
Yes. I mean, it does go back to getting to know yourself and know maybe your triggers and notice if there's a certain time of day that can be more stressful or triggering to you for maybe it's late afternoon or evenings. And seeing what you can infuse into your day to help minimize like the effects of those triggers. So if it's in the afternoon, seeing if you can pop outside for a little 10-minute walk after lunch or have a cup of tea, something to just settle things down before that like higher activity time. And because then you're also going to that higher activity time potentially with your kids, having the feeling that you had some time to yourself, those 10 to 20 minutes versus like, oh, I didn't have, that's part of it too, feeling like your time is being taken and you don't have time for yourself. And then all these people wanting things from you at a certain time of day. So that could be a trigger. So really finding like little pockets. It doesn't have to be hour meditation twice a day, like finding time for maybe a 5-minute journal in the morning or before bed to get your thoughts out, 10 minutes of white space a day, like walking. Like before we did this interview, I walked around my backyard with a cup of tea. I didn't have time to do an hour walk, but I had time to get out there for 10 minutes and look at the pool. I didn't go in, but I can see, so that reduces stress. And other than that, cycle tracking and knowing particularly what weeks of the month you may be more prone to anxiety. Sometimes we have more anxiety and tension when estrogen goes high mid-cycle or before our period. So kind of like having that awareness and knowing that that could be there and be trying to get to bed a little bit earlier during those times, listening to a meditation or guided visualization or doing more yoga during those times. I really find like adaptogens can be helpful, but it is a little tricky to figure out which adaptogen's right for you because they are balancing herbs and some are more energizing and some are more calming. And when I'm saying adaptogens, it's like things like ashwagandha and maca and rhodiola and Siberian ginseng I like a lot for women in perimenopause because it does help a little bit with energy, but it's not stimulating, because sometimes we may have little anxiety and palpitations mid-cycle, so we don't necessarily want to be stimulated. So there's lots of tools. The key is finding what works for you and doing it consistently.
yeah, and how do you this I hear this all the time because I tell women, you have to take that time. And I think part of the issue is, we want our families or our spouse or our friends to notice that we're kind of in trouble and remind us or give us permission to go and take that bath or to go for that walk or whatever it is that we need to do for ourselves. And they're not going to. And the way that I put it is like, I'll walk around the corner and my husband will see me. I feel like I'm a troll doll, the little fat troll doll with the little belly button and the hair sticking straight up. That's how I feel. I feel like and he'll say, "Oh, you look lovely today. I love you, that color on you," or whatever it is. And I'm thinking, you know, he really can't tell. Nobody knows how you're feeling on the
Yeah.
inside, particularly if you're pretty good at just doing the things that you need to do. So if you
Yeah.
need to
Getting
take
everything
that,
done, keeping it held together on the outside. Don't
yeah, you
know.
you can't
I
say,
mean, I think,
could you pick up the kids today? That's not gonna. He's gonna say no. He's
well,
gonna
and
say,
that's, I think, having a conversation with your partner, letting, like, and making some sort of plan, like maybe one day a week they pick them up and then you to go for a walk or something like that. I have one patient was a divorced mom of two teenagers and had a lot of stress, and we came up with a plan with at 8:30 at night. They were on their own. She already helped them with everything they needed, and she was going to go into her bedroom, had a nice suite, took a bath, like read, whatever. 8:30, she just closed the door. She's like, they're safe, they're fine, they have everything they need. And that was so they knew that if they needed anything from her, they had to get it in by 8:30. She went in her retreat. Another patient, she would do her journal that I just mentioned, like while her son was in soccer practice. I mean, she's sitting in the car instead of scrolling. She kept
yeah,
her journal in the car, and that's where she did it. So I mean, like finding, taking the time for you, but it may already be there. Just needing to communicate
just
with
have to
others
find
to
it.
like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like
to
I have
find.
one friend right now who's feeling very, suffocated at home with family stuff. And so she was like, I really can't talk because I just don't have any privacy. And then she came up with the idea of, you know what, I'm going to go for a walk and I'm going to call you while I'm on my walk. So we go for a walk.
Mhm.
I'm not with her, but we just talk on the phone. So
Yes.
we're both moving forward. We're, getting stung by mosquitoes, which is, part of being outside and in nature. And but it gets us both kind of thinking a little bit more clearly, I think, because we're moving our bodies and like you're having a walk with a friend, but you don't have to drive the half an hour to go. Do you know what I mean? Because those kind of
Right.
half hour get there and then get home, that could be enough for you to decide not to do it.
Right. Or just, oh, I don't have the time for that, and it's
Yeah.
just not going to work. So yes, figuring the using technology to our advantage. Yes.
Yeah. And I have a boundary with my phone. Like I put my phone to bed around 8 o'clock at night. Sometimes earlier if I'm feeling stressed out. So I do have friends that are like, usually I'm really responsive. I'll send them a message right away and they'll be like, "Oh, I didn't hear from you. So I thought that maybe you were mad at me." And I'll say, "Was it after dinner time that you sent the message?" Because I probably wasn't looking at my phone because I find that I'm helping a lot of people in my large group and I do private coaching and I teach music lessons as well. So I'll have clients sending me messages and they just want to connect. But I find it stressful because I'm
Hmm.
being of service.
Yes.
Right? So I need to be in that headspace. And if I'm always in that headspace, then where do I fill my own cup? Right. So I
Right.
need it
That's
to be like
great,
that.
having that dividing line. And I was thinking that your friends are like hear your idea of like, oh, after 8, it's not on, and they probably think that's wonderful. They they
Yeah,
probably,
they're like, "How do you do that?" And I was like, "Well, I take it and I put it in the kitchen. The kitchen's downstairs and it's far enough away, right? If I'm watching a show with my partner, then I'm not,
Mhm.
it's just like any other boundary. You make a decision of how far you're going to go and then you get to that point. Doesn't mean I never look at my phone after, if there's some reason to, but like my grown offspring, they know if they need to get in touch with me, they're going to send a message to stepdaddy because he'll have his phone on and mine will be parked because I'm self-employed and I need to have that boundary. But that's one of the things I think as a mom that can really affect our moods is that we might be feeling like we really need the support from our family and the people around us and our friends to understand that we're suffering. But when we move through our day, we don't seem to be any different than like you still look great. Do you know what I mean? So you
Mhm.
have to kind of announce when you're having a hard
Yeah.
day, announce it.
Yes. And and just have that just like create that awareness. Like we have to create that awareness in the medical community. We need to create that awareness in our home life, because right, you may seem like everything's fine on the outside and pushing through, and they may not realize.
Yeah, and we can't really, I definitely noticed that with myself. I can't push myself the way that I used to. Like, I was just, a friend of mine this morning sent me a message that she's having a migraine and she's figuring out how she's going to work later anyway. And I was like, dude, I'm just so far. Not, if I wake up with a headache and it's bad, I'm just going to cancel the day because I'm going to wait the rest of my life for other people to decide that my health and well-being is their priority. Right?
Mhm.
When does anyone else, unless it's your mom might decide that your health and well-being is more important than anything, but everybody else is all, naturally, as a human being, they're going to expect, especially if you've been a go-getter, that you're going to take care of yourself. So I often am just shaving things off my schedule, top of the day, end of the day, those things are gone because I don't have the same energy. And if I get a good day, then I do as much as I can. And I do that with working out too. If I'm having a good day, I'll definitely do my workout. And if I'm not having a good day, I do something else, right? I'll go for a walk and I'll take my dog and watch them play or do some yoga and just not sweat it, because you have to kind of, especially with
Mhm.
the big fluctuations, right? You have
Right. And like really being in tune to like the expectations you have for the day. And I'm the same thing. At certain times in my cycle, I may do more walking than yoga. And other times I may do more, intense exercise, and like having sort of being in tune and knowing that it is more about consistency and overall what you're doing versus what you do week versus 1 week as far as weight management and stress management. It's really like having that consistency of doing something.
And I wanted to ask you about weight just in general. With one of the things that I've been thinking about lately is I think maybe some of the weight gain that we might have in perimenopause to menopause could potentially be because we are having so much mood kind of fluctuations and we don't really know how we're going to feel day to day, that we're reaching for something to help us feel better. So we might be reaching for, and then it doesn't take much, right? 100 or 200 calories extra every day. You add that up, that's going to pack on the pounds, even if it's not, you know, the worst food in the world. It's more calories than what you need. And we're trying to soothe ourselves to calm
Yeah.
those. Yeah.
Yeah. And especially if we're having cortisol imbalances and high stress affecting blood sugar levels, your brain is telling you to eat something every afternoon. That may be, and even if it's not a donut, it's still, if it's carrots and hummus, like you said, still 200 calories more consistently will add up, especially if you have some of those imbalances going on and you're not necessarily using the carrots and hummus the best way either.
Yeah, because you're not moving around enough, or like if you don't really feel good, the last thing you want to do is work out. But I tell my clients all the time, like, just trust me on this and try it. You can be feeling pretty low and pretty awful, and then do something that you like for exercise, like walking or dancing or yoga or the things that you enjoy. And then at the end, you can check and see, and you probably do feel better, and you probably have more energy throughout the day as well. It's one of the things that I like this morning woke up, I didn't want to do my weight training session with my trainer, although I love my trainer. That's partially how it works, right? I want to see her.
Yeah.
But I just always tell her if I'm having a bad day, like if I wake up and I'm having back pain or I'm feeling really low or I'm feeling like I have low energy, and she'll take what she's planned for me and just modify it and make it a little bit easier, less stressful. We might stop a little bit sooner, those kind of things. Just being vigilant about making sure that you keep moving every day, but that you're not stressing yourself.
Hmm.
So you just
Yes.
can't get away with you just don't bounce back in the same way.
Right. And that's kind of one of the shifts I work with on my patients in perimenopause, because a lot of them are waking up at 5 a.m. to do an intense cardio class before work, but we're trying to figure out how to get to more sleep and to not be depleted. And sometimes we do need to shift that to be a walk instead of always doing that HIIT class. So adjustments, it's all about adjusting things and having that flexibility with the intention of moving, keeping the movement high.
Yeah, keeping the movement high, I think, is the recipe for success, but not somehow making sure that it's not stressful. Like, so certainly not doing like hit
Mhm.
hit workouts every
Yeah.
day. Maybe if you feel great, they're definitely good. I just want to take a look at the questions, make sure that we kind of, I think we did kind of cover them. And then you sent me links to a couple of videos, so I'm going to definitely link them into the replay on the School of Perimenopause. Um, and then you had something about testing too, so there's probably information. I think we did hit everything, so that's really great.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Uh, I testing. I can send you the link to Mira Care and a discount code if your community wanted to look at that, because
Yeah.
it is available in Canada. I did
It's
check.
one of those things that a lot of us are really frustrated about. Like, as I said, I'm lucky my functional medicine doctor doesn't hesitate to test, but a lot of us are really frustrated that our doctors just refuse to do it. They just won't do any testing. And I just talked to a woman last week where she's telling me what's going on. And I was like, you know what? It sounds like to me too much estrogen and not enough progesterone, but they added in the standard, we'll give you this much estrogen and that much on a patch. And she's
Mm,
feeling much, much worse. And she's been on that. So I was like, oh, this is one of the reasons why testing would have potentially helped her from if they had tested before they started treating.
yes.
So they are looking for ways that they could just do it themselves, honestly.
Yes. And the Mira test, you do have your own monitor that you're using urine tests, and you have it on your phone in your app, and you can choose to share that with your doctor or not. But then you can see your total chart yourself, and then decide how many months you want to test, and at least get an idea of if your HRT is doing what it's supposed to be doing for you or not, or if you may want to go down that HRT road.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that's one of the things where, I just encourage women to look into their options for sure, and don't rule out hormone therapy because, like, I'm not on a traditional because of the too much estrogen. I'm a progestin pill to stop my period, which is brilliant. I love it. People go, oh, synthetic hormones, blah blah blah. Like, I love it. I think it's great. It's worked really, really well for me. So please don't, you know, marry an opinion before you in that situation and you feel like you might need it and then not take it because you feel like it's bad or wrong in some way. It is life changing. It's meant that I don't have to have a surgery. I'm able to stop my period chemically, which for me has been really, really important. And because of the endometriosis, I needed that. And
Mhm.
progesterone that I'm lucky to have a functional medicine doctor who trusts me so I can take more or less depending on how I feel because I really can just kind of sense it and I can feel my ovaries shutting down. I just told my chiropractor today, which is funny, but it's the way that I actually can. It's not painful, but I can feel that they're kind of just going offline. They're not really, they're still there, but they're retiring. They're sending in their papers. And an antidepressant, which also gets a bad rap, but I really needed the help and I found something that helps just enough. And so I encourage women to really don't decide it's not for you. If you need the help, be willing to try. And then you can decide it's not for you because it didn't work or you didn't like how you felt on it. That's a completely different issue. But if I hadn't had those that kind of help with the doctor who was testing, we wouldn't have known exactly what kind of program to put me on.
Right. And there's lots of different options. And I think a lot of the conversation or just general idea of HRT is that it's always estrogen and it's always estrogen everywhere. And that's not necessarily true. Um,
Well, mean, I probably will get there. I mean, I hope eventually I'll go into menopause.
yes, your goal is to transition at some point. Yes.
I'm turning 55 in October, so any time would be fine for me. But yeah, it's been a great chat. So what we'll do is make sure that links and anything that you want to share with the population will get put into the Patreon. I will make sure that this is going to be live. It'll sit there on Facebook for a day or two to make sure that people that are just on Facebook have the chance to look at it, and then it'll be in the speakers tab and you can share that with anybody at any point. And it's been just so nice to get to know you a little bit, Amanda.
Yes, it's been nice to get to know you too. I'm glad that we were connected through the fashionistas. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, it's been such a pleasure just in general getting to know other women. And I think it's important to just say, I really appreciate that you're helping so many women in perimenopause. the perimenopause being such a confusing time, and maybe people don't believe you, and having something like your program that they can have the help and the support and more frequent contact with the naturopath, and like the every 3 months that happens a lot. I think that it really is really essential, right? We need people that believe us and are willing to help us to do what we want, to work within our, with our values and our time frame and what's going on for us specifically.
Yes. And I get that. That's why I say that's why I like perimenopause is so clinically interesting, because everyone's on their own journey. And I find it really helpful to just have those relationships with my patients and know where they're going on their journey and have that contact, because that's right. We're tweaking things every few weeks sometimes for some women. So that's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, I said to my husband this morning, I was like, I bet you if you took all of my treatment plans and did them back to back, you'd see that I do offer the same things again and again and again to clients, but it's in a different order depending on what's going on when they first come to me. So, and not everybody gets the same variety of things because they may or may
Mhm.
not need that, right? If they have a different concern, and so it is still custom, but it's the same kind of things, and a lot of it just boils down to having someone believe you and listen to you. So that's really important, and I'm glad that you're there doing that for us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm glad, happy to
Yeah,
help and to share the information.
awesome. And you look great today. I love your little necklace combo.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to end the meeting, and then I will be in touch if we need anything else. And feel free to email me that link for the test, and we'll
Yeah,
talk again soon.
sounds great. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you, Amanda. Bye.